Nagorno-Karabakh is the modern designation for a southern part of the Lesser Caucasus range, encompassing the highland part of the wider geographical region Karabakh. The name Karabakh itself was first employed in Georgian and Persian sources from the 13th and 14th centuries to refer to an Armenian principality, known by modern historians as the Kingdom of Artsakh or Khachen.Currently most of this area is under the control of the internationally unrecognized Nagorno-Karabakh Republic, which has economical, political, and military support from the Republic of Armenia, but the region is internationally recognized as part of Azerbaijan. The final status of the region is still a subject of negotiations between Armenia and Azerbaijan. This article encompasses the history of the region from the ancient to the modern period. Ancient history. The region of Nagorno-Karabakh was occupied by the people known to modern archaeologists as the Araxes, and is located between the two rivers bearing those names. Little is known about the ancient history of the region, primarily because of the scarcity of historical sources. Jewelry has been found within the present confines of Nagorno-Karabakh inscribed with the cuneiform name of Adad-Nirari, king of Assyria. Legend of Aaron. According to the local traditions held by many people in the area, the two river valleys in Nagorno-Karabakh were among the first to be settled by Noah's descendants. According to a 5th century AD Armenian tradition, a local chieftain named Aaron was appointed by the Armenian king Vologases I to be the first governor of this province. Ancient Armenian authors, Movses Khorenatsi and Movses Khachen.Currently, name of it Aaron, the ancestor inhabitants of Artsakh and next province Utik, the descendant of Sizak, and through it, the descendant of Haik, the ancestor and eponym of all Armenians. Artsakh, a province of the Kingdom of Armenia. For the first time the territory of modern Nagorno-Karabakh is mentioned in inscriptions of Sada II, king of Urartu, found in village Tsovk in Armenia, as the region Ertekini. Then, in our data, a breakdown to the Roman epoch, a following mention, already at Strabo, which characterizes Augustana as the area of Armenia exposing the greatest number of horsemen. It is unclear when Augustana became part of Armenia. Strabo, carefully listing all gains of Armenian kings since 189 BC, does not mention Augustana, which indirectly shows that it probably has been an accessory of the Armenian Empire to which it could get in the inheritance from Persian satrapy. East Armenia. Ruins of the city Tigranakert are near the modern city of Agdam. It is one of 4 cities with such a name that were built in the beginning of 01 BC by King of Armenia Tigranes the Great. Recently Armenian archaeologists have led excavation of this city, fragments of a fortress, and also hundreds the ancient subjects similar to subjects found in Armenia. Fencing of a citadel and basilica of 5th-6th centuries AD have been revealed. Excavation have shown that the city existed since 1st century BC until 13th or 14th century AD. Ancient inhabitants of Artsakh spoke a special dialect of the Armenian language. We know about this from the author of the Armenian grammar Stepanos Siunetsi, who lived in around 700 AD. Strabo and authors of the 1st and 2nd centuries, Claudius Ptolemaeus and Pliny the Elder, unanimously approve. The border between Greater Armenia and Caucasian Albania is Rivisaris. Authoritative encyclopedias on antiquity also name Ura southern border of Albania. Artsakh is much to the south of this river. Certificates which would approve its accessory Caucasus Albania to other state up to the end of the 4th century does not exist. Armenian historian Faustus of Byzantium read that during an epoch of the disorders which followed intrusion of Persians into Armenia, Artsakh appeared among the risen provinces, whereas Utik has been grasped by Caucasus Albanians. Armenian military commander Mishag Mamikonian defeated the country of Artsakh in a big battle, made many inhabitants of the region prisoners, took hostages from the rest, and imposed a tribute on them. In 372 Mishag defeated the Caucasus Albanians, took from them Utik, and restored the border on Kura, as was earlier. According to geography, by 7th century Armenian geographer Anania Shrakatsi, Artsakh was the 10th among the 15 provinces of Armenia, and consisted of 12 districts: Myusabank, Vakunik, Berdadzor, Metserank, Metskavank, Hajlank, Mukamk, Piank, Parsakank, Kushti, Pans and Kot. However, Anania writes that during its time Artsakh together with the next districts will tear away from Armenia, and it is valid. In 387 Armenia has been divided between Roman Empire and Persia, thus Artsakh together with Armenian provinces Utik and Patakan was attached to Caucasian Albania, Mashtots and Aran-Shakik period. In 469 the Kingdom of Albania was reformed into a Sassanid Persian Marspanate. In the early 4th century Christianity spread in Artsakh. At the beginning of the 5th century, thanks to the creation of the Armenian alphabet by Mesrop Mashtots, an unprecedented rise of culture began in whole Armenia, in particular also in Artsakh. Mesrop Mashtots having founded one of the first Armenian schools at the Artsakh Amaras monastery. In the 5th century the eastern part of Armenia, including Artsakh, remained under Persian rule. In 451 the Armenians, in response to the policy of compulsion of the Zoroastrian Persian overlords, organized a powerful revolt known as the Vardan War. Artsakh took part in that war, its cavalry having particularly distinguished itself. After the suppression of the revolt by Persia, the considerable part of the Armenian forces took shelter in the impregnable fortresses and thick woods of Artsakh to continue further struggle against the foreign yoke. At the end of the same century Artsakh and neighboring Utik united under the rule of the Aran-Shakiks, with Vachagan the Devout at the head. Under the latter a considerable rise in culture and science is observed in Artsakh. According to the evidence of a contemporary, in those years in the land there were built as many churches and monasteries as there are days in a year. At the turn of the 7th century the Albanian Marspanate broke up into several small principalities. In the south Artsakh and Utik created a separate Armenian principality, that of the Aran-Shakiks. In the 7th century the Armenian Aran-Shakiks were replaced by the Migranians Amaranids, a dynasty of Persian origin which, becoming related with the Aran-Shakiks, turned to Christianity and became rapidly Armenicized. In the second half of the 7th century, in the initial period of the Arab dominion, political and cultural life in Artsakh did not cease. In the 7th and 8th centuries a distinctive Christian culture was shaped. The monasteries Amaris, Orik, Katarovank, Djavishtik and others acquired a significance that transcended the local area and spread across the Armenian lands. Armenian princedoms of Dayak and Khachen. For the beginning of the 9th century, princely houses of Khachen and Dayak were storing up strength. The Prince of Khachen, Salzmabatian century, became one of the most favorable periods for the land's flourishing. During this time, valuable architecture was constructed, such as Hovan's Mkartich Church and the vestibule of Gansizar Monastery, the Dadi Monastery Cathedral Church, and Giti Chavank Cathedral Church. These churches are considered to be the masterpieces of the Armenian architecture. In 30 to 40 years of the 13th century, the Tatar and Mongols conquered Transcaucasia. The efforts of the Artsakh Khachen king Hassan Jalal succeeded in partially saving the land from being destroyed. However, after his death in 1261, Khachen became another victim of the Tartars and Mongols. The situation became still more aggravating in the 14th century in the years of the subsequent Turkic federations, the Karakoyunlu and Agukoyunlu, having replaced the Tartars and Mongols. During this period the area received its Turkic name Karabakh in Turkic and Garden in Persian for the first time. However, it is necessary to mention that as the name Karabakh referred to not only present Nagorno-Karabakh, and also Flat Karabakh, that is the plain before merge of rivers Arax and Kura, where Turkic nomads began to prevail. The centuries-long subjection of the local Armenians to Muslim leaders, the relation with Turkic tribal elders and frequent cases of Turkic-Armenian-Iranian intermarriage resulted in Armenians adopting elements of Perso-Turkic Muslim culture, such as language, personal names, music, and increasingly humble position of women and, in some cases, even polygamy. Armenian malikdoms. Princedom Khachen existed until 16th–17th century and has broken up into 5 small princedoms. Duly Stonatalish malikdom included the territory from Ganj to the bed of the river Tartar. Karabakh malikdom was situated in the territory stretching from the river Tartar to the river Khachen. Khachen malikdom existed in the territory from the river Khachen to the river Kaka. Varanda malikdom included the territory from Kaka to the southern side of Big Kirs Mountain. Dayak malikdom stretched from the southern slope of Big Kirs Mountain to the river Arax. Those malikdoms were referred to as Kamsa, which means 5 in Arabic, while initially subordinate to Persia's Ganja Khanate, which itself was appointed and fully subjective by and to the Safavid Persians. The Armenian Maliks were granted a wide degree of autonomy by Safavid Persia over Upper Karabakh, maintaining semi-quasi-autonomous control over the region for 4 centuries, while being under Persian domination. In the early 18th century, Persia's military genius and new ruler, Nadir Shah, took Karabakh out of control of Ganja Khans in punishment for the support of the Safavids, and placed the region directly under his own control. At the same time, the Armenian Maliks were granted supreme command over neighboring Armenian principalities and Muslim Khans in Caucasus, in return for the Maliks' victories over the invading Ottoman Turks in the 1720s. According to some historiographers of the 18th century, of those 5 Maliks, only Melik Hasan Jalalians, the rulers of Khachen, were local residents of Karabakh, while the other 4 had settled from neighboring provinces. Thus, Melik Baglayans of Gulistan were native UTIs from the village of Nij in Shirvan. Melik Israelians of Jabad were descendants of the Melikau, Sayunik to southeast, and hailed from the village of Magavuz in Zangezur. Melik Shahnazars of Varanda hailed from the region of Armenian Gegarkuni to the east and received the title of Meliks from Shah Abbas I in reward for the services. Melikavanians of Dayak were descendants of Meliks of Lori, an Armenian princedom to northwest. These allegations is however discounted by modern scholarship. Modern Western scholars Robert Hewson and Cyril Tumanov have demonstrated that all of these Meliks were the descendants of the House of Khachen. Thanks to the Meliks from the end of the 17th century in Artsakh, there arose and spread the idea of Armenian independence from Persia. Parallel with the armed struggle, Armenians in that period made diplomatic efforts, at first turning to Europe, then to Russia. Such political and war leaders as Israel Ori, Archimandrite Minas, the Catholicos of Gans as Yesai Jalali, Ayuzbashi Zavan and Tarkan become become people leaders. The absence of power and political instability in the 18th century in Persia created the threat to its integrity. Both Turkey and Russia expected to get its share from the possible breaking up of Persia, Turkey with this purpose striving for enlisting the support of the Dagestan mountaineers, Russia seeking its supporters among Armenians and Georgians. In 1722, Peter the Great's Russo-Persian War began. At the very beginning, the Russian forces succeeded in occupying Derbent and Baku. Armenians, encouraged by the Russians, concluded the union with Georgians and collected an army in the Karabakh. However, the hopes were deceived. Instead of the promised help, Peter the Great advised the Armenians of Artsakh to leave the native places of residence and move to Derbent, Baku, Gilan, Mazandaran, where the Russian power had recently been established in the war, intending to consolidate its hold on the occupied Khanates. Attached to Caspia, Russia signed the treaty with Turkey on July 12, 1724, giving the latter a free hand in the whole Transcaucasus. In the same year, Ottoman troops invaded the land. The main victim became the Artsakh Armenian population, who, headed by Meliks, rose to struggle for its independence, never having received the promised support on Russian side. Yet, Peter the Great's march gave a new impulse to the struggle of the Armenians. In the 1720s, the in Karabakh formed host concentrated in 3 military camps or skuks. The first of them, called the Great Snak, was situated in the Mrav Mountains near the Tatar River. The second Pokar Snak was on the slope of the Kirs Mountain in the province of Varanda, and the third in the province of Kapan. Shnaks, i.e., the Armenian host, possessed absolute power. It was a people army with the council of military leaders, the Catholicos of Ganzazar, also entering it and having a great influence. Proceed from the demands of wartime, Meliks shared the power with the Uzbashis, all of them having equal rights and obligations at the military councils. The Armenian host at the head of its leaders, Catholicos Yesai, Uzbashis Avan and Tarkan, resisted the Ottoman regular army for a considerably long time. In 1733, the Armenians, now encouraged by another military genius who happened to be Nadir Shah of Persia, in one special appointed day massacred all Ottoman army that stood on the winter quarters in Kamsa. After that former position of area has been restored, in gratitude for services rendered to it, Nadir Shah released the Meliks of Kamsa from submission to Khans of Ganja and appointed the governor above them Avan, Melik of Dayak, having given it a title of Khan. However, Avan Khan soon died Karabakh Khanate. In 1747, Turkic ruler Pana Ali Khan Javanshir, by then already a successful Naib and royal garant de Maison, found himself displeased with Nadir Shah's attitude towards him during the latter's later years of rule, and having gathered many of those deported from Karabakh in 1736, he returned to his homeland. Due to his reputation as a skillful warrior and his wealthy ancestors' legacy in Karabakh, Pana Ali proclaimed himself and was soon recognized throughout most of the region as a ruler. The Shah sent troops to bring back the runaway, however, the order was never fulfilled. Nadir Shah himself was killed in Khorasan in June of the same year. The new ruler of Persia, Adil Shah, issued a firman recognizing Pana Ali as the Khan of Karabakh. Melik of Varanda Shah Nazar II, who was at odds with other Meliks, was the first to accept suzerainty of Panik Khan. Panik Khan founded the fortress of Shusha at a location recommended by Melik Shah Nazar, and made it the capital of Karabakh Khanate. By the same time, the region and the whole wider Caucasus region was reasserted under firm Iranian suzerainty by Aga Muhammad Khan of the Qajar dynasty. However, he was assassinated some years afterwards, ever increasing the political unrest in the region. The Meliks did not wish to reconcile reconcile to the new position. They desperately hoped for the aid of the Russians and had entered into a correspondence to Catherine II of Russia and its favorite Grigory Potyomkin. Potyomkin already gave orders that at an opportunity its area, which is made of people Armenian, to give in board national and thus to renew in Asia the Christian state. But Khan Ibrahim Kalal learned about it. In 1785 he arrested the Dazrabid, Gulistan and Dayak Meliks, and plundered Gansizar monastery, and the Catholicos was planted in prison and poisoned. As a result of this, the Kamsa Melikdoms finally broke down. Ibrahim Khan made the Karabakh Khanate a semi-independent princedom, which only nominally recognized Persian rule. In 1797, Karabakh suffered the invasion of armies of Persian Shah Aga Muhammad Khan Kayar, who had just recently dealt with his Georgian subjects in the Tiflis. Shusha was besieged, but Aga Muhammad Khan Kayar was killed in the tent by own servants. In 1805, Ibrahim Khan signed the Kurekcha Treaty with Imperial Russia, represented by the Russian commander-in-chief in the war against Pavel Tsitsinov, according to which Karabakh Khanate became the protectorate of Russia and the latter undertook to maintain Ibrahim Khalil Khan and his descendants as the ruling dynasty of Karabakh. However, the following year Ibrahim Khalil was killed by the Russian commandant of Shusha, who suspected that Khan was trying to flee to Persia. Russia appointed Ibrahim Khalil's son Mektigulu his successor. In 1813, the Karabakh Khanate, Georgia, and Dagestan passed to Imperial Russia by the Treaty of Gulistan in 1813, before the rest of Transcaucasia was incorporated into the empire in 1828 by the Treaty of Turkmenchay. Following the two subsequent Russo-Persian wars of the 19th century, in 1822, Mekti Khan escaped to Persia. In 1826, in Karabakh the Persian armies with which was and Mekti Khan have intruded, but they could not grasp Shusha, which was protected desperately with Russian and Armenians, and have been expelled by Russian General Madras. The Karabakh Khanate was dissolved, and the area became part of the Caspian Oblast, and then Elizabetpol Governorate within the Russian Empire. Russian rule. The Russian Empire consolidated its power over the Karabakh Khanate following the Treaty of Gulistan in 1813 and Treaty of Turkmenchay of 1828. When following two Russo-Persian wars, Persia recognized Karabakh Khanate, along with many other Khanates, as part of Russia. The Karabakh Khanate was eliminated in 1822. A survey prepared by the Russian imperial authorities in 1823, a year after and several years before the 1828 Armenian migration from Persia to the newly established Armenian province, shows that all Armenians of Karabakh compactly resided in its highland portion, i.e. on the territory of the 5 traditional Armenian principalities, and constituted an absolute demographic majority on those lands. The survey's more than 260 pages recorded that the district of Khachen had 12 Armenian villages and no Tatar villages. Jalapat had 8 Armenian villages and no Tatar villages. Dayak had 14 Armenian villages and 1 Tatar village. Gulistan had 2 Armenian and 5 Tatar villages, and Varanda had 23 Armenian villages and 1 Tatar village. Only 222 Armenians migrated to lands that were part of the Karabakh province. In 1840, in the mountainous part of Karabakh, Armenian immigrants founded a new village, which they named Miraga after the town in Persia where they came from. During the 19th century, Shusha becomes one of the most significant cities of Transcaucasia. By 1900, Shusha was the 5th on-size city of Transcaucasia. There was a theatre, printing houses, etc. Manufacture of carpets and trade were especially developed, since being there for a long time. Census of 1897 shows 25.656 inhabitants, for them of 56.5% of Armenians and 43.2% the Azerbaijan Tatars. For the period from 1874 to 1920 there were 21 names of newspapers and magazines. For them 19 were in the Armenian language and 2 in Russian language were published. Armenians, making the richest and educated part of the population, defined cultural shape of Shusha. During the First Russian Revolution 1905, in the fields there were bloody armed conflicts between Armenians and Tatars. October Revolution, 1917. The set of Russian provisional government happened after the Russian Revolution of 1917. Grand Duke Nicholas with the Special Transcaucasian Committee, Osoby Kavkazsky Committee established the Transcaucasian Democratic Federative Republic. Karabakh became part of the Transcaucasian Federation. Following the October Revolution, a government of the local Soviet, led by ethnic Armenians Stepan Shurmian, was established in Baku, the so-called National Council of Baku. The Armenians under the Russian control devised a National Congress in October 1917. The convention in Tiflis was concluded in September 1917, with delegates from the former Romanov realm. The Muslim National Councils passed the law to organize the defense and devised a local control and administrative structure of the Transcaucasia. The council also selected a 15-member permanent executive committee, known as the Azerbaijani National Council. 1918. In May 1918, this soon dissolved into a separate Democratic Republic of Armenia, Azerbaijan Democratic Republic, and Georgian Democratic Republic states. Ethnic and religious tension, March 1918. In March 1918, ethnic and religious tension grew and the Armenian-Azeri conflict in Baku began. Musa Vatanity parties were accused of pan-Turkism by Bolsheviks and their allies. Armenian and Muslim militia engaged in armed confrontation, with the formerly neutral Bolsheviks tacitly supporting the Armenian side. As a result, between 3,000 and 12,000 were killed in what is known as the March Days. Muslims were expelled from Baku, or went underground. At the same time, the Baku Commune was involved in heavy fighting with the advancing Ottoman Caucasian Army of Islam in and around Ganja. Major battles occurred in Yevlak and Agdash, where the Turks routed and defeated Dashnak and Russian Bolshevik forces. In these circumstances, the government of Azerbaijan declared the incorporation of Karabakh into the newly established Azerbaijan Democratic Republic of Baku and Yelizavetpol gubernias. However, the Nagorno-Karabakh in Zangezur rejected to recognize the jurisdiction of the Azerbaijani Republic. Here, the two Armenian national UYEZD councils took the power into their hands, organized and headed the struggle against Azerbaijan. People's Government of Karabakh, July 1918. On July 22, 1918, the First Congress of the Armenians of Karabakh was convened, which proclaimed Nagorno-Karabakh an independent administrative political unit, elected the National Council as well as the People's Government. People's Government of Karabakh had 5 administrators in the following areas: Foreign and Internal Affairs, Yefishishkanian; Military Affairs, Harushan Tumanian; Communications, Martyros Ivasian; Finances, Movses Terestvatsatrian; Agronomy and Justice, Arshavir Karmalian. Prime Minister of the government was Yefishishkanian, the Secretary, Melik Satyesayan. The government published the newspaper, Westnik Karabakh. In September, at the Second Congress of the Armenians of Karabakh, the People's Government was renamed into the Armenian National Council of Karabakh. In essence, its structure remained the same. Justice Department, Commissar Arso-Hovhannisyan, Levon Vardapetian, Military Department, Harushan Tumian, Department of Education, Ruben Shah Nazarian, Refugees Department, Musheg Zakarian, Control Department, Inushter Mikhaelian, Department of Foreign Affairs, Ashot Melik Hovsepian. On July 24, the Declaration of the People's Government of Karabakh was adopted, which set forth the objectives of the newly established state power. Armistice of Madras, October 1918. On October 31, 1918, Ottoman Empire admitted its defeat in World War I, and its troops retreated from Transcaucasia. British forces replaced them in December and took the area under its control.